Stokes. I'm Director of Communications and Public Relations here at Dutchess Community College. This is a great problem to have. We ran out of room. Fortunately, we had 2 overflow rooms, so we're good. But it just goes to show that we were right, that people have a lot of questions about Excelsior, and it doesn't seem like there are a lot of answers out there. So we were the first ones to be proactive in putting this together, and we're really glad you're here. I'm very happy to introduce our Director of Financial Aid, Sue Mead, who's the guru of financial aid. She's been quoted in the New York Times. She's on national boards and state boards having to do with financial aid. And she'll tell you everything there is to know about Excelsior tonight. So welcome, and thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you on behalf of Judy and myself and my staff that are here this evening. We thank you. And again, what Judy said is basically true. We understand that there's a lot of questions regarding Excelsior, and we really want to be the source of your local information. We are talking daily with New York State between SUNY and the New York State Higher Education Department, so the information that you are getting is real time today. This is what we know. The scholarship basically began discussions a while back, but actually Governor Cuomo announced this initiative right after the first of the year, and it went through the budget process and was announced about, not this past Saturday, last Saturday, and since then, as many of you have heard, there's been a lot of discussion regarding Excelsior. So again, we've put together this program to help you get the best answers, the best information, so that you can make the best choices. And that's what it's about. It's not as wonderful as it sounds. Free is never free, okay? So we want to ensure that students and families have the best information from which to make the best decision. And that when you do make the decision to apply for Excelsior and perhaps be awarded Excelsior, that it is the right decision for the students and for the family, because there is a lot of information about that, about the scholarship outside of, educational institutions that you probably have seen or read about, and we really need to ensure that the information that you're getting is accurate information. Okay, so I'm going to be clicking as we go along. We had cards in the back where you could put down your email address. We didn't want to make a lot of paper copies, but we will be happy to send you electronically a copy of the PowerPoint, and we're also going to build a database of your email addresses so that we can send you consistently up-to-date information on Excelsior. Okay, and obviously if you do have any other questions or concerns, that you feel free to contact the college. We are your community college. Whether your students are coming to Dutchess or any other college, we serve the needs of the community, and that's basically why we're here, to help provide that information for you. Okay? So what is the Excelsior Scholarship? This is a program that was, again, developed and proposed by Governor Cuomo and his administration, was passed in the legislature in the most recent budget cycle, which, if you remember, this year was a little late. It's supposed to be April 1st. It was like the first 10 days of April that they were discussing and getting, and the legislators were up there, and basically, as a result, settled the budget with Excelsior being one of the funded components. For certain students, the Excelsior Scholarship will provide free tuition to SUNY and CUNY 2-year and 4-year colleges and universities. And again, we need to stress certain students. We want to make sure that when you leave here today, you have enough information to make an educated choice as to whether this is a scholarship that would benefit the student. So let's go over some general eligibility requirements. You have to be a New York State resident, okay, which basically means that you have to have resided in New York State as a permanent resident in New York State for a year. It doesn't mean that the student comes from another state and comes to college here. Even if they're in their second, third, fourth year, it means that you are a permanent resident of the state. You file your income taxes under New York State. Your license is your permanent address on your license is a New York State license. You are a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. You're enrolled in either an associate or a bachelor's degree program. There are many community colleges and 4-year colleges in the state that offer certificate programs. Those certificate programs are not eligible for the Excelsior Scholarship. It has to either be an associate or a bachelor degree program. The student does have to be full-time. Full-time is defined as 12 or more credits in a semester-based system. If it is a trimester system, they have to have 8 or more credits in each of those trimesters. There's 3 primary terms in an academic year if it's on a trimester, 2 primary terms if it's a semester-based. Complete the FAFSA and the TAP applications. In the back, for the 17-18 year, we have the FAFSA worksheets, which you can use. How many of you filled out your FAFSAs yet? Okay, a couple of you have some homework to do. Okay. It is essential that the TAP and FAFSA applications be complete. I'll go into it a little more later. But the Excelsior program is what's called aid of last call, meaning they will look at eligibility for the other state and federal programs, Pell Grant and the New York State TAP program, and also, which we don't have definite guidance on yet, it may include scholarships from the college before Excelsior will be awarded and applied. Okay? And you complete the Excelsior scholarship application to be available in late May. I'm going to give you the web address at the end of the presentation. It's for New York State Higher Education Services Corporation. They will be the agency that is administering the Excelsior scholarship. If you go on that website, there is an area where you can enter your email address and they will email you information, especially when the application is ready for completion. Okay? Income eligibility, and this is where I think a lot of the maybe inaccurate information has been portrayed, because when you read it in the paper or heard about it, the thing that you hear is if you make under $125,000 for this scholarship, you get it. $125,000 is the 3rd year phased-in amount. In order for a student to be eligible in the fall of 2017, there has to be a combined family federal AGI, that means student and parents, if it's a dependent student, of under $100,000, and that's your federal adjusted gross income. That is before exemptions and before deductions, which is different than the New York State TAP program. Okay? New York State will be verifying that information. Now, that's the income eligibility criteria in the first year. In the second year, that income threshold is increased by $10,000. So families and students who have a combined federal AGI of less than $110,000 could be eligible for the Excelsior program. And finally, in the 3rd year of the phase-in, that's where it goes up to the $125,000. But unfortunately, many of you may have heard, you know, the news release was under $125,000, you're automatically eligible, right? How many of you heard that? Only a few of you here and there. Yeah, it's basically what was going around. And there's a lot, again, of different eligibility criteria on the front end in order to be eligible for the scholarship. And then we're going to talk about what happens on the back end and what you need to maintain that scholarship. So how much is the scholarship? The maximum Excelsior Scholarship Award is $5,500 per year. Okay? Minus any TAP or Pell or other scholarships that go towards the cost of tuition. We are still waiting for guidance from New York State as to exactly what funds, in addition to the Pell and TAP, we know that is going to be considered, that will come before Excelsior will be applied. And you're going to hear me discuss a lot this evening that we're waiting to hear. Okay, because again, we're talking, this scholarship has been live for about 2.5 weeks. So we're giving you the information that we have as of today. But a lot of these have yet to be defined in law and we'll be learning on a daily basis, and that's the information that we'll be passing on to students and families. Okay? Any difference is covered through a SUNY or CUNY Excelsior tuition credit. The tuition at a 4-year SUNY college is $6,470. The maximum Excelsior is $5,500. If the student is not eligible for any Pell or TAP or other scholarships, there is a net difference there of how many? What's the math? You don't whip out your phones? About $970. Is my math right? $970. okay? That $970 will be covered by what they call a SUNY or a CUNY Excelsior tuition credit, not to be passed on to the student and the family. All New York State is saying is this is how much the Excelsior is going to be. The colleges to which the student will attend and receive that scholarship will be responsible for awarding out of their own operational funds the Excelsior tuition credit, okay? Now, at a community college such as Dutchess, our tuition is only $3,528. So no one at Dutchess will get a maximum of $5,500 because our tuition is that much lower. Remember, Excelsior can cover tuition expense only. It doesn't cover fees, it doesn't cover books, it doesn't cover room and board expense, okay? It is for tuition only. And that's an important concept to understand because once you are enrolled in college, students will get a bill. And that bill will have tuition on there, but it will also include things like fees, not the books, those are bought separately, but will include, if they're going to be a residential student, room and board expense. The only thing that Excelsior is eligible to pay is tuition only. Let's see, and again, the amount of the scholarship cannot exceed the cost of tuition at the SUNY or CUNY institution that the student is attending. Room, board, fees, and books are not covered by Excelsior. How long can a student get the Excelsior scholarship? It's not until they receive the degree, okay? For an associate degree, they can get 2 years only. For a bachelor's degree, they can get only 4 years of funding. And this brings up certain challenges that we're going to discuss in a little bit that, again, you evaluate to determine, is this a good fit for the student and for our family financially? 2 + 2, meaning 2 years at a community college for an associate degree and then a bachelor's degree. There are some 4-year schools like SUNY Canton that offers associate, bachelor, and master's degree program. Graduate programs are not covered under the Excelsior program. And there can be 5 years of funding for an approved 5-year bachelor degree program. There are certain programs within New York State that are 5-year bachelor degree programs. It doesn't mean that it takes the student 5 years to get a 4-year degree. They are approved 5-year bachelor degree programs, and the Excelsior can be used for the 5 years of that. Okay? The scholarship can be applied to 1 associate degree and/or 1 bachelor's degree. It will not pay for multiple degrees, nor will it, and this happens to a lot of students, they may get their bachelor's degree in a certain program or curriculum and either find that they're interested in something else, they can't find a job in that field, a variety of things, and students come back to school. If they have received their bachelor's degree and say want to come back to a community college for a nursing degree or a bookkeeping accounting degree, they cannot get Excelsior for that. They already have the degree. Certain interruptions of study may be allowed in terms of degree completion, but that will be decided upon on a case-by-case basis through New York State. The colleges will not be making those decisions. Actually, New York State will be awarding to whom these funds go, and they will handle exceptions to any part of the process. So, if you have, and you've been awarded an Excelsior degree, what does the student have to do to maintain that eligibility? The student will be responsible to complete 30 credits per year. That includes the traditional semesters, as well as any summer or winter intersession. They have a full academic year, plus those intersessions to accumulate the 30 required credits. And that, again, is extremely important, and let me tell you why. Because if a student is awarded the Excelsior program, and they get the money for the fall semester, and they were awarded for the spring semester, and by the end of the academic year, they have not accumulated the needed required credits, 30, we are, by law, required to take away the last semester of their spring award and then the student and the family would be responsible to repay that to the college. That's why understanding some of these caveats are extremely important. That also becomes a consideration if you have a student, when they're first entering college, it is determined that they need some remedial coursework. The state has not yet defined for us what remedial coursework, how it's going to count in terms of Excelsior. And remedial coursework is coursework that the college has determined that the student needs to take in order to get to college level. So they don't actually get college credits for that. And there are a large amount of students, for whatever reason, who may need some level of remediation, either in English or math. And if they do, that is going to be part of their academic plan, and it may not allow them to proceed through a 2-year degree in 4 semesters. So at some point, they may lose funding because they're not making the required 30 credits in that academic year. Everybody understands that right so far? Okay. What we're going to do also, as a brief interruption, if you do have questions, hold them for me, because I'm going to leave plenty of time to answer questions with the information that we know as of this point. Complete all courses with a passing grade. And see, this has yet to be defined by New York State Higher Education Services Corporation, the agency that will administer the program. However, subsequent to this, we have recently got information which basically says that New York State will allow, as a passing grade, a D-. But if a student consistently gets a D-, it's basically going to equal out to an F, because they'll never be able to go on to required courses if they get that low a grade. And once the scholarship is lost, there is no eligibility to regain the Excelsior scholarship. So once it's lost, it's lost. We as an institution are embracing the idea that our students are not going to seek to achieve a D-. That obviously they are going to work towards program completion and towards success. And the interesting part of that is basically you need a 2.0, or is the average, to graduate. So having New York State, basically say that the student would run out of the scholarship with those types of grades sooner rather than later anyway. Okay? Again, failure to complete those 30 credits or meet the grade point average required will result in the removal of that last semester of the Excelsior scholarship. The student would then owe the college the amount of the scholarship and the tuition credit they were given for that semester. Okay? Once eligibility is lost, it cannot be regained. And that is extremely important to understand. We put this in the presentation because we want students and families to plan for being able to afford the college cost with or without Excelsior. Because of the stringent guidelines, you want to ensure that when your son or daughter is at college and they are moving forward with their educational program, if for some reason they lose eligibility, you don't want them to have to lose the ability to continue their education. So relying totally on Excelsior to be the source of funding that supports the reason why that student's at that institution would be doing a disservice to the student. Additional requirements. And this, again, is where a lot of the misinformation is out in the media. We've seen it, as well as people who are providing different information. New York State has said that for each year the student receives the scholarship, they are required to live in New York State. They are not required to work. There's not a service requirement built in. However, if the student is employed, they have to be employed in New York State. If the student is allowed to, the student could be allowed to attend a graduate school out of state. That would be a period of deferment that, let's say the student found a really good program in Connecticut, in a graduate program. The state would allow them to go and complete that graduate program. Then they would be required to come back to New York State to meet that residency requirement. Now, and you see that I have it in big print there. Failure to meet the residency requirements will result in all Excelsior scholarship awards converting to a student loan. That's an awful lot of money that could turn into student loan debt. So you have to be, again, towards the end of the presentation, give you some things to think about that we can talk about, but the residency requirement is extremely important when looking at this as an option and part of the decision-making process. You may feel for your children this is a great option, but you also may have heard in their whispers or little discussion, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get out of New York. I don't like being cold. I want to go to Florida. Oh, I like the South better, or whatever. You really have to listen carefully, okay, to what they're saying, because you don't want to put them in a position where they make that decision because it's part of their life plan, and then they don't meet the residency requirements. Again, converting those funds from a grant scholarship form to a student loan. Excelsior Scholarship for Transfer Students. We have a lot of questions that we are asking New York State on a daily basis. And in fact, between SUNY and New York State Higher Ed, they've come to the financial aid professionals and have said to us, tell us everything we need to know that can happen to a student along their educational career so that we can address it as we're building this program, because that's what's happening right now. As you and I stand here, this program is being developed. They are meeting all hours of the day, all hours of the night, trying to get this into place so that it is an option for students in the fall semester. So students transferring from one college to another may continue receiving the Excelsior Scholarship if they remain on track for program completion. That's one of those vague terms, if they remain on track. So if a student is taking courses at Dutchess, graduates with their associate degree in business, and they transfer to a four-year institution, but now they want to be a criminal justice major, how many of those credits are going to transfer that will allow the student to meet the 30 credit requirement and be on track to complete that bachelor's degree in 4 years? Well, 2 additional years because they have the 2 years. That hasn't been defined, that on-track component. But more than likely, changing a major or changing programs would limit the student's eligibility of Excelsior because they'll never finish the program in that amount of time based on the credits that may not transfer from their associate degree at a community college, or even between four-year institutions. All of the credits that they may have taken at one institution may not be accepted in the student's program of study at the second institution. And again, we are waiting for New York State to define on-track completion. Okay, do you see how it's getting narrower in terms of how you have to look at this program? Yes?
Sorry to interject, but I transferred from a school out of New York State, however, I'm still a New York State resident. Would you be able to clarify at least a little bit like what?
If you did transfer to a school, or you came from a school into New York?
Came from a school into New York.
That, and it's going to sound like a broken record, that, oh, I'm sorry, sure. The gentleman asked, he had transferred from a school out of state into New York State. How would that be looked at in terms of eligibility for Excelsior? That's what you're saying. My understanding at this point in time is those credits that transfer in don't necessarily have to be from a New York State school, and yet that hasn't been strictly defined. But it would have to have enough credits that keep you on track for degree completion in the amount of time that they're giving you for Excelsior. Okay? There is nowhere yet where it says that the transferability has to be within schools within New York State. But again, on a daily basis, we're sending these scenarios and these questions to New York State so we can ensure, again, that you're getting the best information from which to make the best decisions. And, you know, our role here today wasn't to come here and be naysayers to you. It was, again, with the validity of the information that you have, as families making the best educated choices for your son or daughters. So, let's look at Excelsior and say, is it a good fit? Because that's what it's about. And when we talk about fit, we're not just talking about the money aspect of it. When your son or daughter are thinking of going to a college, whether it be a local community college, whether it be a four-year institution, you examine that decision based on fit. Is it a good academic fit? Will the student be challenged? Will they thrive there academically? Is it a good social fit? Do they feel comfortable at the institution? Whether it's a big school, small school, urban, rural, and is it a good financial fit? And this part looks at the financial fit, as well as the student themselves. Will the student be able to complete 30 credits per year in 2 semesters? Now, students don't always take 15 credits a semester for a variety of reasons. Maybe they have to work a certain number of hours. They may have other obligations, or they know what type of learning style they have and feel that they'd be much more productive and successful maybe with 4 classes or 3 credit classes. 12 credits is still a full-time course load. If they don't take the full number of credits in order to meet that 30 credit requirement, they would be jeopardizing the loss of that scholarship, again, that would need to be repaid that final semester, and they would never regain eligibility. So they truly have to look, what do they anticipate that they will be able to handle academically and be successful? They may say, you know what, I can handle the 15 credits. But if it is a first-time student, as well as a continuing student, looking at that coursework, it's a lot different. Even for our, how many continuing students do I have here right now? Okay. So you know what you can handle academically, correct? And you know you're doing yourself a true disservice if you take on more than you can handle. And it's not a 40-week year, it's a 15-week semester. And the essence of college is you do a lot more of the learning on your own that happens in the classroom. So there's a big transition going from high school to college, as well as being in college and figuring out what kind of learner you are, correct? Okay, I didn't put her here. Didn't pay her to say that. Okay? So can you honestly look, can the student, family look and say, will the student be eligible to complete 30 credits in a year? Now that could be 12 credits in the fall, 12 credits in the spring, and 6 in the summer. Or 12 credits in the fall, 12 credits in the spring, maybe 3 in a winter intersession. We have a winter intersession that falls between the fall and the spring semester, lasts about 3 or 4 weeks, where the student can earn 3 credits or so. And will they be able to make up those 30 credits? However, those other sessions for which the student may take coursework to help them reach the 30 credits are not covered by Excelsior. That would be paid out of pocket by the student and or family. Okay, you had a question?
Just really quick, so when they say 12 credits per semester, obviously that's only 24. So with the 6 that you're making up, it has to be 15 for each semester.
No,
so
it has to be 30 in total.
But they're not going to pay for spring?
No, they're not going to pay for winter intersession or summer.
To make up for the 30?
Correct. It can be part of the student and the family's academic plan,
Okay.
but the scholarship will not cover those intersession courses, which a student might need to get up to the 30 credits and be successful.
So it really has to be 15 per semester, not 12?
It doesn't have to be 15.
To be fully paid, though?
To be fully funded for the 30 credits in both semesters, yes. But keep in mind, the student takes 15 credits in the fall, does fine, completes them all. student takes 15 credits in the spring, they only complete 12 of them. Then they're 27 credits. If they don't take a summer course and pay for it themselves to meet that 30 credits, that we have to decertify, take away the spring funding, the student and family would owe that spring semester worth of award back to the college.
And if you fail, I think you're right.
Okay, you can't hear, the student, or,
And they don't need to.
okay, going forward, now you had a question. We don't have a mic, right? No. You had a question, Emma.
No, and then afterwards, if you do not meet those 30 credits and you do have to pay back for the spring semester, then you cannot reapply for the scholarship again.
You lose your eligibility totally. You cannot regain eligibility.
Do you need to, how often do you need to apply? Is it a one-time apply? Or it depends?
Our understanding is it's going to be once, this gentleman asked, how often do you have to apply? It's our understanding it will be part of the financial aid application process, which occurs on a yearly basis. So they would apply each year for their TAP, for their FAFSA, and the Excelsior scholarship. That's what we know as of this point,
Thank you.
okay? Do we want to hold questions for a little bit? Just let me finish up. I think I have a slide or two more, and then we'll definitely take questions, because obviously there's, you know, a lot of information that we're presenting to you, okay? Does the student plan to live in New York after graduating college? The attraction of hearing that something may be able to assist the family with the rising cost of higher education is very enticing. It's very attractive. And there's a lot of emotionality tied to the decision and wanting your children to go to college and have a higher education. Again, the information we're presenting is we want to ensure that as you're going through this process, you are extremely realistic. That you look at the situation, does the student intend to be here after they finish school? And it might not even be graduating, meaning the student goes for a year or two, but they don't get their degree. Either they've maybe figured out, oh, they got a really good job and they're going to work for a while and may go back at some point, or they have some other interest. Simply stopping, even though it is not the same as graduating, may require, as far as we know as of this point, the same residency requirements. That if they have received Excelsior, they would need to stay and live in the state for that amount of time, or else it will turn into a loan. And again, more of this we'll get to find as we go along. But they're not just going to say, because you graduated and haven't lived in the state, it's going to be a loan. They're not going to exempt people who just stop coming, to our knowledge right now. Okay? More to think about. And these, you know, you'll see consistently that I'm repeating these points because these are the things that I want you to take out of this room when you leave, and either in your car ride home, or when you maybe stop for ice cream, it's a nice warm night out, or you get home and you have a real discussion about what this means, that you think seriously about these things. That again, you try and remove the emotionality out of it with the mentality of, you know, we'll worry about that later if they don't live here. No, these are decisions that are made on the best information we have now, so that the student and the family isn't feeling this a couple of years from now. If you lose the Excelsior scholarship eligibility, are you prepared, again, to repay your last term of funding from the scholarship and to pay for the remainder of your education on your own? Because again, you cannot regain eligibility. Are you sure about your major or program of study, as only 2 or 4 years of funding will be available? Switching majors could cause a loss of Excelsior funding if previous credits taken don't meet the 30 credit requirement in the new program of study and you aren't progressing to on-time completion. College is a really interesting time for young people. It's a time where they explore, where they may want to look at different classes. How many students do I have here, not just parents? Okay, high school seniors. Do you know exactly what you want to be when you grow up? How many do? Fewer and fewer of the hands are going up. And then sometimes that's what college is about. It's about learning about yourself. It's about taking things that you think you enjoy. Maybe you want to explore. Maybe you're not definite about the major that you're in. Well, by taking a major that you're not exactly sure will be your destination, utilizing scholarship funding, and then later on you say, now I know, and I'm going to change my major. Those credits, if they do not transfer into that new program to help you meet program completion requirements, will put you in a position where that scholarship could be lost. Okay? So it's really, really important for the student to understand. We're not saying if you're going to switch programs, don't take Excelsior. That's not our intent here. Our intent is, again, that you leave with this knowledge base so that when you are making the decisions, you're making them with the most accurate information that we have at this point that we can provide to you. Important information, sources and contacts. There's our address, the SUNY Dutchess email address, or SUNY Dutchess web address. The address, the New York State, hesc.ny.gov is New York State Higher Education Services Corporation. They are the agency that will be administering the Excelsior program. Our office, the Office of Financial Aid here at Dutchess Community College, we are located in the Orcott Student Service Center, room 104. That's our general phone number as well as our email address, where you can email questions to us. And we're going to set up a separate file, and we hope, again, we will be building a database of your email addresses. As we have more information, we will be providing updates so that you all have the most accurate information at any given point in time from which you and your family can make the best decisions. Okay, now we're going to open it up to questions because I'm sure you all have many of them, and I don't know the easiest. I do ask that you stand up. I'm not going to ask you to public speak, but so loud enough so I can understand the question as well as other people
But they
can.
can't hear me in the other room, so you're going to need to repeat it.
I will, okay, I forgot. Okay, then I'll start up front here, sir. How can I help you?
I have one daughter in Iona right now.
Okay.
Iona would not qualify.
Iona is a private school. Excelsior is for SUNY and CUNY institutions. However, in addition to Excelsior, as part of the budget process, the state has also authorized additional funds to private schools, and they will be awarding what's called ETA, Enhanced Tuition Awards, which mirror Excelsior scholarship requirements. So the private schools will have funding, will have the ability to, again, get awards with the same requirements that are built into Excelsior. So if you go on that New York State Higher Education Services Corporation website, there is a section for Excelsior, and right next to it, a section for the Enhanced Tuition Award. It's called ETA. I keep thinking estimated time of arrival, but it's called the ETA, the Enhanced Tuition Award, and those are for the private schools within New York State.
Is the limit the same?
No, there is a different dollar limit. My understanding at this point in time, and please understand that because we're going to be administering Excelsior, that's been my focus here at the institution, but my understanding is there's the potential for up to $6,000 per student for the Enhanced Tuition Award. But again, that'll be funneled through New York State and through the individual private institutions. Okay, then and we'll have a similar application process as well. Yes?
In regard to the 30 credits a year, if your high school student is coming in and they want to take an easier semester and do 12, and they've got credits that are transferring from high school that are college level, that still counts to make the 15?
We are waiting, and
Okay.
you're going to get tired of hearing me say this. Yes?
Repeat the question.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. The question was, in order for a student coming from high school, in order to carry a lighter load, maybe 12 credits, to enhance success, I'm sure that's what you're thinking of, and they bring credits from the high school, of concurrent courses, college level courses that they've taken, and/or I'm thinking that you might be thinking AP credits. How does that count towards the 30 credit requirement? And all that I can tell you right now is we are waiting for guidance on that. What I have seen in law is that, it's not in final law, but this is what they've told us, that if a student was here or in college, let's say in the spring of 2012, and they earned 15 credits, and then they came back in the fall of 2015 and earned 15 credits, that's 30 credits, correct? According to the state, right now, that student would not be eligible for Excelsior because you have to have accumulated those 30 credits in the prior 12 months from the time of application. That's what they've told us thus far. Okay? I had one of my staff members was at a state conference last week, and they had someone from New York State addressing these issues. You had like 300 financial aid people, it was crazy. And someone from New York State addressing some of these issues. And she actually hesitated giving information one evening, knowing the next day that it would be changed from what she knew because they were working on this in Albany. That's how fresh this information is. Okay, I want to go like kind of aisle by aisle, and I'll get to you, I promise, yes.
If my son was planning to do BCC for 2 years and then transfer out of state, do you know if the residency requirements will be deferred?
We are waiting for clarification. Oh, the question, I'm sorry. The question was, if the student comes 2 years at a public college, whether, I'm assuming you said Dutchess.
Yeah.
Which, thank you. And attends Dutchess for 2 years.
His associates.
Right, and gets his associate degree, and then transfers out of state for the bachelor's degree, the remainder of the bachelor's degree, will they defer the residency requirement as they do for the graduates, the people that are going to go out of state on graduate school? The only thing I can tell you is I posed that exact question. They've asked the financial aid officers to send questions to New York State. That was the exact question that I sent to them and asked them for clarification. If we're going to defer based on graduate study, can we defer based on undergraduate study at an out-of-state school? Okay, working backwards. I will get to you guys, I promise. Okay.
You described it as an aid of last call.
That is
and
correct.
there's a TAP and a Pell. So would you if you qualified for the TAP and the Pell and then you have a balance left over, would the Excelsior pick up that balance? Or?
It could pick, okay. The question is, if, as I said, the Excelsior Scholarship is the aid of last call, and there is Pell Grant applied to the account, there is TAP applied to the account, and there is a remaining balance, would the Excelsior pick up the remaining balance? And the answer to that question, as far as we know, yes, it could. That being said, and that's one of those things you have to think about, wow, would I want my son or daughter to accept this $400, maybe if that's all the balance that is left, award, and then have to remain in the state and be tied to that obligation for a period of time? It's something that just has to be considered. The other thing that, again, we are waiting for clarification. The way we understand it now is if the student is a recipient of, let's say, TAP and/or Pell and institutional scholarships, then that will be counted as well prior to the Excelsior eligibility. Okay, should I? Oh.
I was hoping you could define the family contribution, because like we're in a divorced family that the kids live with me. Do both parents?
For Excelsior,
For the,
yes.
yes, for the scholarship.
Our understanding is this is what they, okay. Hold up a sign with a big question mark. The question is, in terms of the Excelsior and the contribution from the family, if you are coming from a separated or divorced family, how is that handled according to Excelsior? The way we understand it, it's going to follow the FAFSA application process. What that means, if you are in a separated or divorced household, you go by the income of the parent with whom the child has resided with most in the previous 12 months. And the only thing that is considered from the non-custodial parent is any child support coming into the household. And that's our understanding of how they are going to implement the income guidelines for Excelsior as well, as of this point. Okay, moving back. Yes.
If the child goes to a master's program in New York State and they work while they're going to the master's program, will that fulfill the requirements of living and working in New York while they're going?
Just while they're in school? Okay, the question is, if the student receives the Excelsior, they stay in New York to do their graduate work, they live here obviously, and they're working, there is not a service requirement, again, built into it, they just can't work out of New York State. If they are a resident, then they are meeting the residency requirements for each year that they receive the scholarship, whether they're in school or not, they're here. Because it's after your undergraduate work that that clock will start ticking. Okay, I remembered. Okay.
Two questions really quick. One, is there an age requirement for the student?
Meaning they have to be so old or
Is it open
something?
to, say you're somebody in your 60s that wants to go back to school?
No, there's not. It is not. The question was, if the student is a non-traditional, we don't call them older, we call them non-traditional. A non-traditional student, is there an age limit? And there is not.
Second question. So say my son takes the scholarship for 2 years, yet only stays a resident for 1 year. Is he required to pay both years back or just?
The question is, if the student receives 2 years of the Excelsior scholarship and only stays in New York for a year, how much of the scholarship will they have to repay? I'm not going to give you a definite answer. I don't know how New York State's going to handle that. The way they've told us the conversion is going to occur is that the student is responsible for 1 year of residency for each year that they receive the scholarship. Logic would say if he stayed in New York State for 1 year, he met his 1 year residency requirement for his 1 year of study. But if there was another year of Excelsior, logically and rationally, he would be responsible for that to turn into a loan. But that is not set in stone. New York State has not gotten to the point where they have defined the conversion process yet.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to keep heading back and then I'll keep heading front. Okay, yes. Sure.
I just want to clarify the term adjusted gross income.
You're
Is
better.
that before deductions or after?
Okay, the question is, when New York State, for Excelsior, is looking at the adjusted gross income, what is that? Your federal adjusted gross income is the bottom line on the first page of the long form of your tax return, and it is before exemptions and deductions. Okay, wait, there was somebody over here.
So just on that question, so that would just be based on the family and the student, or if you have multiple students for the adjusted gross
The
income?
family and the student. You do not, the question is, you just add just based on the parent's income for the federal adjusted gross, the parent and the student, or the parent and all of the siblings. For aid purposes, it's our understanding at this point, it will be the parents and the student applying for the scholarships, federal adjusted gross income. That will be counted towards those eligibility levels.
Okay, and one more question. So student gets a scholarship for 2 years. They remain a resident in New York, but they get a job in Connecticut.
If the law reads, the question is, if the student stayed here for 2 years, got the scholarship, resides in New York State, but gets a job in Connecticut. In the law, right now, it says for each year they have to reside in New York. They do not have to work, but they cannot be employed out of state. Cannot, and that's in the legal language, I read that. Okay? Okay, heading back, yes.
Who is funding you want to know? State?
Look in the mirror, that's it. We are all funding the scholarship. Okay? We are all funding the scholarship. This is a tax-based funded scholarship. Okay? And which brings up, again, an important point that I want to As of this point, we know there is a certain amount of funding that will be applied to this scholarship for the fall of 2017. If there are excessive applicants, the law reads that New York State has the right to randomly choose recipients or to put it as a lottery basis. Because there's a finite amount of funding there, okay? Yes?
Next semester is my, beginning of my second year, and in my first year, well, just ending, fall semester, I chose a major that was a good fit for me, and I got not great grades, and I didn't get as many credits. This semester, I'm in a major that I want to stick with, and I'm going to get all my credits, but the problem is that I don't know if I'm going to reach 30 by the end of this year, so would I still qualify, or would it not, because the 30 credits is not met?
You wouldn't, and they won't count the credits that you take. The question is, she had a challenging semester, first semester. It's a current student, continuing student, did much better in her spring semester, but will not have the 30 credits. Even if you took courses this summer, they are not counting the summer credits towards the eligibility for Excelsior because they won't have summer transcripts by the time in July and August where they're actually making the awards. So you would not be eligible. My understanding at this point with the regulations they have put in place. And there's a very calm gentleman who's been patient in the back, but I'm going to take this young lady in front of her.
Well, just to build on that question, then, just can you clarify for continuing students, they have to have had 30 credits in this particular academic year, in the spring and the fall, fall and the spring, to be eligible for the fall of next year?
The question is, for a continuing student, do they need to have accumulated the 30 credits in the fall semester and the spring semester in order to be eligible to apply as a continuing student for Excelsior in the fall? And the answer, as to what we know right now, yes, because they will not be counting summer grades. They're going to be actually evaluating the applications. What we have also been told is that the students will be responsible for uploading their actual transcripts to New York State that will be evaluating for the eligibility of those 30 credits. Once awards are made, it will then be the school's responsibility to verify that they truly have earned those credits to maintain the certification of that award.
So, if we've already done the FAFSA for next year,
Yes.
how do we?
You've done the FAFSA, correct? Okay, and you've completed the TAP application along with that. You will not be able to complete the Excelsior Scholarship till the end of May when it becomes available. If you go on the New York State Higher Education Services Corporation website, on the front page, on the right-hand side, I think it says Excelsior. On the left-hand side, it says Enhanced Tuition Award. You click on the Excelsior, and there will be a box where you can put your email address where you will be notified when the application is ready for completion.
Thank you.
And hold on one sec, because that young man has been very patient in that.
My question has to do with the rigidity. Most colleges have programs where it's possible for a kid to take 14 credits one semester and 16 credits another because they're taking a lab course or something like that. So how would that fit into this kind of...
Okay, the question is, due to the flexibility of a student's schedule from semester to semester, how does that work? That's why it's not done on a term base. It's done as an academic year. You have to have those 30 credits accumulated. So you may be, you could have a student who would take 12 credits in the fall semester, got going, and then have a certain, energy level or want to do it or class availability and take 18 credits in the spring. That could get them to their 30. Is that the answer? Is that your question?
That's fine. And then the other question, my younger guy is going to be homeschooled this year, and there's a chance that he may take some college credits. From what I'm hearing, that's not in his interest because it'll foul up the whole 30 credit.
We don't know that, okay? We are not, they haven't defined how those pre-college, college credits are going to factor into this. You know, I would like to say, wow, New York State's not going to necessarily penalize a student for, you know, advanced type of placement and doing things, but we just don't know how they're going to handle it yet. The same as we don't know how they're going to handle remedial coursework. And again, I don't mean to be vague or not give you the, we're just waiting for the guidance.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Based on that question, that if high school credits didn't carry over, they count toward the degree, but then to fill in those 15 credits, they'd have to take electives then.
The question is, if the, now correct me if I'm wrong, if the college courses that the student took in high school did not count towards, you're saying towards Excelsior, not towards the student's program,
Right.
okay? What would they have to do, or could those credits be used for electives? To be quite honest, again, we don't know how they're going to allow us to take those concurrent credits into consideration. As soon as we know, we'll be putting that information out there. I'm sure most of you know, Dutchess has an extremely robust concurrent high school program where a lot of our courses are taught in the high school so that students can get that pre-college experience, college level, earn some college credits. So we're extremely interested in figuring out how that's going to apply to our students. And right now, that hasn't been defined.
Okay. So if they didn't carry over, then there's no problem for the student to take the 15 credits, to just take electives to meet the 15 credits.
If they have 15 credits, if they have enough electives in their program that allows them to do that. Because you can't take more courses than what the bucket has. And many of our our curriculums, our degrees are limited to 64 credits. And a lot of that is required, Gen Ed requirements through New York State as well as their major course requirements. And in many programs, you do not have a large level of opportunity for electives. Is anything you want to add to that, Michelle? Michelle is our admissions officer.
Major in liberal arts, which is the first 2 years of any four-year degree, which gives you the most flexibility with allowance.
But if you have a specific major in mind, when you transfer, that could present a problem here because if all those credits do not transfer directly into that major, then they could be compromising eligibility for Excelsior later on.
Yeah, I'm a little confused by program versus degree, because a student can, like, if you think of a giant pizza pie broken up into 3 sections, you have courses in their major, electives, and then requirements. If the student came here and majored in criminal justice, but then wanted to transfer to Marist or business, those criminal justice courses wouldn't be in their major anymore, they would be electives.
Unless they unless they had too many of those to meet elective requirements.
Exactly, so it's a little,
You may lose some of those credits. And that's what you have to be concerned with when evaluating the student's educational choices and the restrictions of this program.
The problem like Excelsior crediting,
The SUNY tuition credit?
Yeah.
The SUNY Excelsior tuition credit is, if you go to a 4-year SUNY school, their full-time tuition is $6,470. The maximum that you can get from an Excelsior scholarship is $5,500. So there's a $970 gap that the college has to fill through what's called an Excelsior tuition credit. That's what it's called, the Excelsior SUNY tuition credit. To fill that gap so that the student does not incur that financial responsibility.
follow-up. Say if you weren't eligible for the Excelsior scholarship, that you have like that and all that, would that tuition credit apply?
No. The question is, if the student does not qualify for the Excelsior scholarship, can they get the Excelsior tuition credit? And no, you can't get one without the other. Yes.
She was first.
Oh, you were, okay. Thank you.
Does this scholarship cover online classes?
If the credits, the question is, does the scholarship cover online courses? If the courses that are being taken count towards the student's major and will eventually, or program of study towards their degree, and leads to program completion, whether it is traditional, in-class, online, or hybrid, meaning a little of both, it is part of the Excelsior, if it's one of the courses that's required for the degree program. For this poor one, I put her off a little bit, and then I'll come back to you, I'm sorry.
So if your student is in a specialized major, and when they graduate, they just cannot find a job in state because of their major, what would happen then?
Are you saying, the question is, if the student was in a specialized major and could not find a job in that major in the state, what would happen? The residency requirement says that the student must be in the state 1 year for each year they receive the scholarship, and if they don't meet that residency requirement, whatever they received as a result of the scholarship would be converted to a student loan,
No exceptions. And,
as we've been told as of this point.
and how is the money paid? Is it like the government loans that they get applied directly to the school at the beginning of the semester? Is this money going in the same way?
Okay, the question is, how is the money applied to the student's account? In law, and this we do know in law, that once the decision has been made that the student is going to be a recipient of the Excelsior Scholarship, New York State will notify the college. The college can post the award, and we are obligated to defer tuition on that based on the receipt of funding from New York State. But again, your question being, if this money isn't here in hand, is it applied to the student's account and deferred based on the receipt of the award? Yes, that's how it is in the law that I read. Yes.
Do they have any information yet on how the student loans are going to be done? Like if they don't get a job and they end up going out of state?
The only thing that
Do
we
they
have,
know percentages or?
the question is, do we have any information on how the loan will be handled? How will it be administered? What will be the terms of the loan? The only thing at this point that we have been told is that it will be an interest-free loan, that there will be no interest charged on the loan. That is not in law yet. The other parts where I say it's in law, I've read that in the law. This is some of the dialogue that I've had go back and forth with New York. Wait, I have this poor gentleman, I'll put him off here.
Connie answered my question with the other lady, but I just want to make sure. After they graduate, they have to live in New York for 4 years then, if they go to school 4 years here?
They have to, the question is, if the student graduated from the school in New York, they have to stay in New York for their bachelor degree for 4 years. And the residency requirement is that for each year that they receive the Excelsior funding, they must stay in New York State for 1 year.
So if they only receive the funding for 1 year, if they stay in New York the second year, then the money is forgiven?
God bless you. The question is, if the student only received the funding for 1 year, they would only have to meet the residency requirement for 1 year. That is correct.
Okay.
That's our understanding as of this point, yes.
If you are living here, you can get a job in another state.
No, the question is, if you are living here,
you don't have
can
to-
you get a job in another state? As wonky as this sounds,
You don't
you have to
work in New
live
York,
here.
but you can't get a job.
You have to live here. You don't have to be working when you live here, but you cannot be employed out of state.
That's absurd.
I'm the messenger, okay? I'm trying my best. Okay, we had a couple in the back here first. Okay, yes.
I have a question. We did our TAP and our FAFSA for this upcoming September. We made too much money because it backed up to the 2015. Now, we're supposed to use that for 2 years. What if our income went down?
Now, when
Can we
you,
apply?
okay, the question is, they've already filled out the FAFSA and the TAP application for this current year, or do you mean 17-18?
For 17-18.
Using the 2015 income information, which was required on the forms. And you're not meeting the income requirement, but your income will be going down for the future years.
Yeah.
Then you could apply, but again, remember, you're gonna, if the student is starting in the fall, they will have to have met those requirements, the academic requirements, the second year in which you may be eligible economically.
So this year she'll have to take her 30 credits, and then next year, because she had her 30 credits.
Then she could be eligible if your income falls within those guidelines.
But then, okay, she was a bridge student too, so she's bridge student this year here, so those credits may or may not count?
Well, she's a bridge student matriculated into a degree program here. She's non-matric now, because she's a bridge. Okay.
Another SUNY school in the fall.
Going to another, the student is currently, one of our bridge students going to a SUNY school in the fall. The credits that she takes here would have to be applicable to her degree at the other school. And then, in order to be eligible in 18-19, she'd have to accumulate the 30 credits during the 17-18 year to be eligible in the 18-19 year based on the income eligibility.
But again, you're supposed to use that FAFSA form for your 2015 next 2 years.
No, 16-17 and 17-18. Starting in 2018-19, you'll use 2016 income.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, where did I leave off? Wait, let me start from the back here.
So if you were to have the scholarship your freshman year, you would then have to stay for 1 year, right? You only have to study a year.
So you only, the question is, if you only receive the Excelsior scholarship in the freshman year, what would the residency requirement be, correct?
It'd only be 1 year, but could that year be during your sophomore year, or would it have to be after graduation?
It would be after graduation or after, and they haven't defined the period of non-enrollment after the student, if they decide not to stop attending, decide to stop attending. Okay, are we working up or back? Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, so you get the Excelsior for 4 years, you have your degree, and you live in New York State but commute to get your master's. Does that count as you living since you're not actually working out of state, let's say?
Yeah, if, the question is, if the student graduates from the New York State College after 4 years of Excelsior, does their graduate degree out of state but actually lives in New York State? My understanding is, as long as they're living here, they're meeting that residency requirement, and not, as long as they're living here and not working
Not working
in
at
another
McDonald's
state,
next to the campus.
as long as it crosses the state border into New York. We're good. Okay.
Kind of along that line, my own daughter was thinking of coming here to do
Great choice.
her core classes.
Okay.
She just enrolled, she's going to 11th grade, she started college with us.
Okay.
Come here and complete all her core classes. I say she only does that for 1 year, and then she was thinking of going to West Con for her degree, for a major. So she do the Excelsior for that 1 year,
Right.
and then once she graduates completely, then she had to stay in New York for another year.
That is our current understanding, that they will allow, we know for graduate, they'll allow them to go out of state and defer. The question is, if the student was here for a year, then went out of state to complete their undergraduate career, their undergraduate degree, would they come back to New York to meet the residency requirement? Would they only have to do it for 1 year? That's your question. Again, we're still waiting for the legal clarification. We know they're going to defer the residency requirement when the student goes out of state to complete their graduate work. Again, logic would say they would do that for undergraduate as well, but that is not in the law as stated at this point. So, like, it'll be like, stay tuned, same channel, same place.
Still got 2 years, so, you know,
So,
much have to change.
And a lot of this will wash out within the next few months. We'll have a lot more details. They want this program up and running by August, so information will be coming
Just
on a
starting
consistent
11th grade next year, so it's like 2 years.
to sweat it out,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
When does the student need to apply? While it's in senior high school, or when he goes to fill out an application for college?
The question is, when does the student need to apply? The application process for a student entering as a freshman in college will begin in October of their senior year. The FAFSA and the New York State TAP applications are available in October of the year prior to the student beginning.
But you can still fill them out if you didn't do it.
Oh, yeah, if you did,
So that's
definitely.
fine.
Yep, yep, okay.
Okay, say the student doesn't fall into the requirements, is the student tuition expected to raise significantly in the next couple of years?
In the law, the question was, if the student doesn't qualify for the Excelsior, what's going to happen to SUNY tuition? The legislature, the body of this law, has said that SUNY schools will only be able to raise their tuition $200 per year, every year for the next 4 years. And then after the year 2021, they'll go back to determine what other types of increases they'll be able to put in place. Sure.
So is
because you did say that we are funding it, so is our taxes supposed to raise significantly as this program develops?
The question is, if we're paying for this, how is it going to be financed? And the only thing that we've been told is through the system of taxation, whether it's property taxes, whether it's sales taxes, whether it's school, we're not sure, but it is a tax-based funded program.
Okay, and this is, they only really have it set for the next 4 years? And then after the 4 years, they're gonna
The
be-
question is, do they have it only set for the next 4 years? The answer to that is we don't have a deadline that Excelsior is going to stop. But in the law, it says we will only allow SUNY schools to increase tuition $200 each for the next 4 years, and then we'll revisit it after that 4 years. But that doesn't say that Excelsior is stopping at that point. Yes?
For the blended family backgrounds with the financial aid process, does it go by the biological parents or is it gonna go by all parties?
Okay, so the question is, for blended families, how does this work? Are you talking for Excelsior or financial aid in general?
In both scenarios, actually, because like my spouse and I live together, married, and I filed jointly, and then dad. So how is that gonna play?
For FAFSA purposes and for New York State TAP purposes, you go by the income of the parent with whom the child has resided with most in the previous 12 months since the time of at the time of application. If that parent, that custodial parent, is remarried, then you do include the step-parent income. The only thing that would not be included, that would be included from the non-custodial parent is any child support coming into the household.
But if legally the third parent does have custodial, like there's no non-custodial privilege.
The question is, you're saying there's equal custody? Okay, what the law says is if there is joint custody, they don't believe that everything is strictly 50-50. They don't believe that. So as a result, then you go by the parent and their situation that has the highest income because that parent would be providing the most support. Questions in the back? Yes. First, this gentleman right here.
All right. I'm a current student here at Dutchess. I'm
Yay.
the dad of my parents. I'm claiming as an independent. Now, when I do the scholarship, do I have to include the parents, or it's just basically my?
Okay, it's a whole different, you don't get to choose. How old are you?
I am 22.
You are dependent according to federal aid purposes, meaning if you are under the age of 24 and you are not married, you don't have any children, you're not in the armed forces, you are not under legal guardianship, not an offer and award of the court, then you are legally dependent upon your parents for financial aid purposes. It doesn't matter where you live, and it doesn't matter whether they claimed you or not. For tax purposes, you are considered dependent for financial aid purposes, and it would require their income on the FAFSA as well as on the TAP and including the Excelsior. If you have an extenuating circumstance, feel free to come into our office, sit down with one of my counselors and discuss it, and then we look at those on a case-by-case basis.
If you're legally emancipated?
New York State does not have legal emancipation, okay? If the student is legally, the question was if the student is legally emancipated. New York State does not have emancipation, okay? But if the student was legally emancipated in another state and they provide that paperwork, that would prove independence. But in New York State, we do not have legal emancipation. Yes?
What is the child that's not EP, they're coming out of high school and they're going into college? Are they still mandated to take those 15 credits? Because I just think that it's a lot, it's a big workload for a child in that circumstance.
Okay, the question is, if the student is coming to us from high school, I'm thinking you're saying with an IEP plan, but an actual high school diploma, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. What we are understanding, and they haven't put it in law yet, is there will be a component, we have a component for the New York State TAP Award called ADA TAP, where it modifies the amount of coursework that the student has to take in order to achieve these levels. What they have told us, I haven't seen it in writing, is there will be something similar for Excelsior, which will enable a student who has documented academic IEPs to be required to take less coursework, and the progression will be considered differently, but they have yet to define that.
One more question. Can you have to go through the registration process first or go to financial aid first
For
for DCC?
For the Excelsior scholarship or just applying to the college?
Well, he's already been accepted, but we haven't registered yet.
Okay, he will be where is Michelle, our admissions person?
Same time, they can register right now, registered students already.
Did you guys
and
get
then
anything?
while he's registering, you can go to
Just call if you have any questions.
Oh, okay.
Did it help? Thank you. Other questions? I see we're thinning out, but that's, as long as I'm here for you.
So, like you said, the student's not sure what they really want to take, so they go 2 years, they get their 2-year degree. But we decide to pay for the 2-year degree. And they decide, okay, I know what I want to do. I'm going to go get my bachelor's now, but I'm going to do it as a 4-year program.
They can apply for Excelsior at that point.
But a different degree, possibly, totally different degree, not what they got there.
The question is, the student got a degree, they're going on to their 4-year degree, what will happen? And that, as I said in one of the last slides, could be prohibited because some of those credits may not allow them to make that 30 credit requirement if all of those credits aren't transferring into that degree
No,
program.
that's not how I'm asking. I'm saying they got a 2-year degree in, I don't know, in computers.
Okay.
Then they decide, okay, I don't want to be in computers, I want to be a nurse. So they say, I'm starting from scratch again, going to get a 4-year degree in nursing now.
According to New York State, from what they're telling us now, as a transfer student, those credits that they're taking here as a continuing student, whether they wanted that degree or not, is going to count towards their new program. And if there are not enough credits to meet the requirement in that new program, that's why it's extremely important that the student
Right.
needs to know they are not going to meet the requirements.
But I'm saying I don't even want the 2-year degree to account for anything. I just wanted a 2-year degree, and now I'm saying, okay, 2 years from now, after I get my 2-year degree that I paid for out of pocket, I'm saying, okay, I want to go do something else. And I don't go to school for a few years and say, okay, I'm going to go to school now and I want to get a 4-year degree. But I'm getting it like I'm starting out as a fresh, brand new student.
My understanding, as of this point, is you don't get to make that choice. The fact that you have college credits and are a continuing student would be evaluated. That has yet to be defined, so don't put that into law. Again, these are scenarios, and we're sending all of these types of things, that being one of them, up to them and saying, we need to clarify this for students and our families. So again, stay tuned, give us your information, because I will be updating this consistently and sending out information, probably in the form of an FAQ type of thing. Yes?
I think you touched on, they possibly may run out of money for this and impose like a Powerball kind of thing. In that case, would it be first come, first served until the projections look like they ran out of money, or how are they gonna, what is it?
The question is, because of the limited funding, how will future awards be determined through the lottery and so forth? In the law, it says they have the ability to make the decision as to how they will choose recipients, whether it be by a lottery or by random choice, based on the limited funding and how they have to award accordingly. And that is in the law, we did read that. Yes.
So it says the max Excelsior scholarship is $5,500 a year minus other scholarships. So that means if I have a $4,500 a year scholarship, it can only give me $1,000.
It is called, the question is if the student, the maximum Excelsior scholarship is $5,500 and they are receiving a $4,500 scholarship, I'm assuming from the college you're attending.
Yeah. So
Okay, it's a,
okay.
pardon?
The college I will with that.
Right. How will that be factored? Will the student then be eligible for $1,000? Our understanding, the way it is written now, is Excelsior will be the aid of last call. So they'll look at your tuition costs, apply any TAP, Pell, and institutional scholarships to their tuition before Excelsior will click in.
So it will only be $1,000?
As of this point, that's how they're telling us it's going to be applied. We're expected to be trained on the nuances of this as it becomes available. Question in the back for hand.
So a lady here asked about students with IEPs.
Correct.
How does that apply to students who are already in college who have a learning disability and they're going to transfer to a 4-year school?
And again, it has yet to be defined. Our understanding is they told us they will be looking at students with those types of academic needs similar to TAP, where they have what they call ADA TAP, that once the student is certified as having the disability, they will then have a different schedule of award completion, of credit completion. My understanding, as they've told us, is that they will be designing the same thing for Excelsior, but they have not given us specifics as to how that's going to work.
So they're gonna have that, they're gonna have those answers before.
They're supposed to have them before September, yeah. They're going to start putting the application as of the end of May with a cutoff date, we are told right now, of July 11th. There's going to be a very small window for application completion. They'll start deciding on awards the latter part of July and August, notify the schools, notify the recipient for applying those awards for full tuition costs. But very small window of application time. This one, please.
If a student was to take 15 credits in the fall, 3 of those credits were for like remedial English or something, and then took another 15 credits in the spring, would they qualify? Would that be considered the 30 or?
Right now, they have not defined how they are going to treat remedial coursework. The original language said it had to be 30 credits applicable to the degree, and there was a lot of discussion from constituents in the college asking about the remedial coursework, so they were going back and revisiting. We just got a thing today that said remedial coursework information has yet to be defined. We'll be providing further guidance on it. Okay. Any other? Yes.
And maybe this is too specific, so I apologize.
That's okay.
So I have a student, current student. First semester was, consider AP credit in high school courses, right? So he didn't take any courses here. He transferred semesters worth. Now he's in school. Should he be applying now? No, he doesn't qualify to get any money for this current year that he's been through, right? Because
That's correct. The question was, the student brought in credits in the fall semester. Here in the spring semesters, should they be applying for now? And the answer is there is no Excelsior for this current award year. Excelsior will not start until August 2017. That's why summer courses are not counted towards that 30 credit requirement either.
So we wouldn't worry about this process until.
Well, if the student could be in school in the fall,
Yeah.
then you would be doing this now. You'd be doing the FACET, you'd be doing the TAP, and when the Excelsior application becomes available, completing that as well.
They didn't cover that.
That,
The next.
right, the next academic year. Any other questions or concerns? Yes?
I may have missed it, I was in the room. The tax year that they're taking into consideration?
2015 federal adjusted gross income from the parent and the student combined.
Will it be the same way every year thereafter, so for 18, 19, it'll be 2016?
That is correct. 19, 20, it'll be 2017, and so forth. It's always going to be 2 years behind. Any other questions? Yes?
As a continuing student, I would have to have 30 credits from the last 12 months.
You would have to, from the time of application, let's say that's going to be the beginning of June, late May, you will have to have had 30 credits from the prior 12 months in order for them to evaluate to determine if you're going to be eligible in the fall.
But this summer's credit.
But summer does not count. This summer will not count. That is correct.
I think you said there was a maximum of 5,500 for the credit, and then if tuition was higher, there was some sort of other.
There is what's called the SUNY Excelsior. The question is, if there is a gap between the tuition and the Excelsior scholarship, which is a maximum of 5,500, that is funded through the SUNY Excelsior tuition credit that comes from the college themselves.
Okay, so I think my question is, if you don't qualify and they need to charge you back and make it a loan, what gets charged back as a loan? Is it the full amount, or is it, the 55 plus the credit, or is it the 55?
My understanding at this point is it would be the 55 and the credit because they're tied together. Any other questions or concerns? Yes.
Have they indicated as to what qualifies as a program? Like, so if a person graduates and they take 2 jobs, one is out of state, one is in state, or if one in state is, say, a part-time or lesser income?
The question is, if the student is, graduates and works 2 jobs, one in-state and one out-of-state, are they still okay, I think is your question. And again, the guidance that they've given us to this point is that it is a residency requirement, and if they are employed, it has to be in New York State.
I guess the question is, what are they defining as employment? 'Cause
Are they working, are they receiving?
but
a
if
wage?
I'm part-time in New York, but full-time in Connecticut, but live in New York,
That, again, it has yet to be defined. Those are those individual circumstances that I'm sure they're gonna have to work out. So, yes?
So one more, a little bit specific. Continuing student, sophomore now, will be a junior next year. Has meets the credit requirements for this current year, but is thinking about tweaking his major, not shifting it completely, but tweaking it. If it requires more time, like so going to like an engineering major instead of something else. If it requires more time, would he only be eligible still for 2 years?
Again, my understanding at this point is that if it is a 4-year bachelor's degree and they have 2 years remaining, those are the 2 years of funding they're gonna get. They're not gonna extend it past that. Again, a lot of this is, as we're talking, I'm sure they're working these things out. That's why we really hope you guys, give us these so we can keep you up to date. And at any point, if you have individual questions, you feel free to send the email. We're gonna build a whole folder full of questions that you guys have. And if there's things I don't know, those are the things that I'm gonna be forwarding directly to Albany to get guidance for you. Any other questions or concerns? So was it worth being here for an hour and a half?
Thank you.
We are your community college. We want to be your local resource for this information. So whether your students are planning on coming here or another school, that doesn't matter. We're trying to address the concerns so that you guys can make the best decisions for your family. Thank you. How are you?